And we're live, I believe. Hello! hello, everybody. So, I can see some people in the comments already. Sorry, we're a little bit late. My fault. I always seem to be late for these things lately. I don't know what it is. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to FOMO Live. I see people in the chat. Hello, Alice. Hello, Gem. My co-hosts here. And yeah, being Friday, I can't believe the week's got to Friday already. We're all a little bit shell-shocked.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's been a week. Yeah,
it's been a bit of a week. But yeah, so we've already got some people in the comments. So for everyone who's here, if you've tuned in, we're here to discuss the March and April FOMO book, which was Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Paterson. Yes, Alice has got an actual copy. I was on Everand, so it's on my iPad. But yeah, and
one copy.
Classic children's tearjerker. I think it was written in the 70s, wasn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. I think it might have been written the year I was born. I think 77.
I meant to think like that.
Yeah, I'm getting on a bit. So we've got some people in the comments. Let's say hello. So Kat's said hello. Happy weekend. Yes, start of the weekend. Zach's here. Hi, Zach. Hello. Back and hi, everyone. Reading off my shelf. Oh, so yeah, Kat's week flew by at lightning speed. Yeah, ours too. Busy. But hopefully we're going to have a nice evening discussing this lovely book. Well, let me just see if I put my banners up. I have banners. I've got a welcome banner. Welcome. Welcome. So while we're waiting on comments, just a general chit chat. What's everybody reading? Millions of things. Gemma, what you know?
So many things.
Well, me and Alice are still reading Ulysses.
I salute you for it, but I don't envy.
Mate, it's the biggest turd of a book I've ever read. What else am I reading? I've started the cover. It's just any Ulysses fans, look away now.
Jem messaged me the other day to say that she'd finished this week's episode. And I was like, oh, I must not have that far to go, and checked in my book. I had 50 pages and I've made no progress since then. So
Alice is below the sad face emoji.
Oh, I don't blame you, Alice. Yeah, Joyce is not for me.
It's bad. I've started The Deep by Rivers Solomon.
Ooh, that should be good.
High hopes for that.
The mermaidy.
Yeah.
Is it horror? Is it a bit horror?
I think so, but I'm only one chapter in, so can't really say yet. I literally just finished a book this evening called Welcome to Trashland. It's a children's book. Oh, have you heard of it, Jack?
No. I like the sound of it.
Yeah, it's really it's got hardly any ratings on Goodreads, and it's set in Ghana with a young boy who works on a trash heap, and he has to collect scrap metal.
Wow.
It would be a great book for year 5, 6 because it's a bit dark in places.
Sounds it. But also quite eye-opening because actually you do, that's why some people do live that. They dig through the trash, don't they? All the big trash heaps and everything. So, and loads of things from around the world end up in places like that, don't they? Old electronics.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just talking about that and this boy that lived there, and I'd really recommend it. It was a really well written children's book. I can't believe it doesn't have more hype, to be honest.
Oh, that sounds good. You'll have to promote it a bit. Sounds like a good one. What are you up to, Alice? What are you reading? Not reading. It's the case, maybe.
I have started The List of Suspicious Things by Jenny Godfrey, which is good so far. I'm only about 3 chapters into that, but I think it's definitely showing promise. Looking forward to that. And I thought today, I might as well try and read the last 100 pages of Dolly Maunder, but I read about 2 and then put it down again. So
that one's been shortlisted, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I DNF'd it, but I've gone back to it because I want to read the shortlist.
Who's the
I'm
author?
already questioning my DNF life choices.
Who's the author of the Dolly Warner? Kate
Grenville.
Kate Grenville.
What else has she written?
The Secret River.
Mm.
The one that I knew before, but she has written a few other things, hasn't she?
The Idea of Perfection, was that the one that won the Women's Prize?
Can't remember.
Secret River sounds familiar, but yeah, I'm not interested in it. I don't know what it is. I love a bit of it's historical, isn't it? Dolly Warner, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I do love historical fiction, but lately there are so many samey ones. I'm just not in the mood for them anymore. Like, I don't know. There has to be something about it.
Yeah.
And how are you getting on with your massive pile of library books then? That's library, is it, Dolly Warner?
Yeah, it is library.
Out.
So. I think I've got at least 2 library books on the go. But then I also started List of Suspicious Things because I wanted to have a book from my TBR on the go. So yeah.
No, I've got too many things on the go as well. Obviously, we're reading Joe Abercrombie book.
Oh yeah, yep.
Which is actually the real highlight of what I'm reading at the moment. I really enjoy that. I finished Sabriel by Garth Nix.
Oh, I finished that today as well.
Very good. But it was, not 5 stars for me at all. But I'm very rarely give 5 stars, to be fair. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I really like his writing.
Yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars because I just thought it was such a fun read.
So well written. Like, his writing's great, and that's his. I don't know if that's his very first book or just the first in that series. It's 25 years old, so it's one of his early books. So you can just imagine his writing's got better, because I've got the Left-Handed Booksellers of London to read, which is the first in a duology, I think, that he's got. So I'm really looking forward to reading that now. But yeah, so I've finished Sabriel. I'm trying to catch up on A Suitable Boy because I'm like 300 pages.
Let's not talk about that. Yeah.
And I've got a book that I've been reading for like ages, Takeaway by Angela. I forgot her surname. Which is I would say it was a People April pick, but I actually started it before April.
It's the one in Wales, right?
Yeah, it's good. So it's basically her autobiography of growing up. Her family, her mum and dad emigrated from China and Hong Kong. Like, her dad's from mainland China, I think mum's from Hong Kong, and they came to Wales in the 80s and opened up a takeaway, and she was born there in the valleys. So it's really interesting. I liked it. I like it a lot, because also it's just, everyone had their sort of, like, nearby us there was our local Chinese takeaway that when I was going to from when I was younger, and a family, and we kind of knew them like for decades. You know what I mean? Like, you go in and it's like, actually, this story of these, like, this community and their lives, and the fact that they opened these takeaways and stuff because actually the language barrier with the mum and dad, and they just they opened up these businesses and sold, because it's just really interesting. It's really fascinating. So yeah, glimpse from the other side of the counter or something. That's the subtitle is Tales from Behind the Counter or something like that. Yeah, so it's really interesting.
On the Dulac Prize, wasn't it?
It was,
or the year before.
It's really good. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. The problem is it just keeps getting pushed to one side because I've got other things that I'm committed to reading with other people, whereas that's one I've been reading on my own.
My book equivalent of that is Thunderclap. I just literally put it down to read all of the Women's Prize fiction books, even though I'm really, really enjoying it. And I just haven't got back to it yet.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it?
I read a few pages the other day.
Only so much reading you can actually get do. I've got loads of stuff waiting for me to read. I've got a load of picture books to review, and I've got to do all my wrap up for Picture This and stuff. But because I was ill last week, it's just thrown me completely. So where are we? We've got a few people here. I'm just going to go back to the chat, and then we'll have a little think about the book. But before we talk about the book, I want to say to everybody, there's going to be massive spoilers.
Yeah.
Talk about this book. So if you're not into the spoilers, we'll be getting in deep into the book, into spoiler land. So just a warning there. Kat said listen to it on audiobook. How was the audiobook?
Yeah, intrigued. I don't think any of us audioed it this time.
No,
did we?
Yeah, usually I have at least have the audio on the go, like from Libby or whatever. But no. Cobalt Dragon. This is Elaine. She's got a lovely channel, by the way, everybody. Elaine, she's very sweet. And hi, Elaine, for joining us. Zach gave it 4.5, but hated every second of it. I'm intrigued now.
We need some more explanations, Zach.
Yes, Zach. More. 4.5, but hated the whole thing. Crashland sounds like my experience in the Philippines. Oh dear, yeah. Sounds like that must have been quite harrowing, eye-opening. Dia's reading. Are you reading Final Empire? Brando Sando. Final Empire. And The Foxwife and The Hiding Place. Current read.
The Foxwife, is that the new one by Yang Chu? Is it? I'm going to read it if it is.
No.
To be fair, hello Chris. To be fair, the rest of Restless Dolly Maunder is the same as the first bit. Dolly gets success, gets restless, and then starts from scratch. 2-star, but along with Taylor. Oh, that's look at Gem's face.
It won't be. It won't be. It's like a dagger in my heart. That comment.
There we go. What made you want to read Ulysses?
Gemma's got a scratch list.
I think it's on your poster, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think she managed to persuade
Gem conned me into reading it somehow.
Like really early as well. I'm sure we booked it in like 2022.
Absolutely,
we did, yeah. And I was like, yeah, we'll read it in 2024 because it seemed like forever away.
Time away.
And then 2024 actually arrived, and I was like, oh, we actually have to read it now.
We're so close to the end though. Well, we've got like 3 more weeks.
Two more episodes, haven't we? Well, you've got 2 more episodes. I've got two and most of a third episode to go. But I think the next one is long, and then the last one is short but has no punctuation.
Oh, fun! That's like my favourite. No punctuation and like just middle, like male navel gazing, basically.
Yeah.
Is what it is, a lot of it.
Not just no speech punctuation, but no punctuation whatsoever in the final part.
I think the silver lining is though that I don't think it can get any worse with or without punctuation. I don't think it will make
it. Just don't.
Also,
it's like jinxing yourself.
The only
it really can't get any worse. It really can't.
The only other positive about the final part is that I believe it is Molly's perspective. So finally, a female bit.
Great, a chauvinist writing a female character. We'll see how that happens.
Woohoo! Can't wait for my no punctuation chauvinistic female character.
Not fun. Oh, God. Kat's currently reading Sense and Sensibility, carried over from April, and The Forest of Hands and Teeth, the zombie book. That's a good combo.
Yeah, very different.
What a name.
I like the sound of it. Berna, hello. Hello. Lovely to see you. Nix's first book was Sabriel. There we go.
Nah,
not bad for a definitely not bad. And actually, that edition that I've got up, I got from the library is the anniversary edition. It's got a whole thing about his writing process, which is really fascinating.
Oh, that is cool.
It's worth doing. Berna's just finished, I'm assuming, Memoir of Julie Andrews. Oh, well, that's interesting. Julie Andrews. Zach, I'm going to start a horror book called Patricia Wants to Cuddle.
I've seen that.
It's free on Audible in the
US.
In the US. So, yeah, Patricia Wants to Cuddle. Yeah, that sounds a bit sinister.
I'm sure that Jolene read that last year. I'm sure she did.
Yes.
Is it good? Is it good, dear?
Is it any good, dear? Audiobook was good. I was driving when it got to the sad part and I started tearing up and had to stop.
Oh no.
I put it off for a few days because I knew it was coming. Oh, yeah, sad.
I cried in the car when we were reading books. Yeah, I cried in the car when we were reading Pachinko. I was like, mustn't cry because I'm driving.
There's Elaine. Thank you for your kind words. Off to finish the Amber Spyglass. I haven't read Terabithia yet. A scoop before spoilers, definitely. Amber Spyglass.
Great book.
Great book.
And out of the trilogy, it's the one that I like the least.
Yeah,
and
it's my least
haven't
favourite.
reread. Yeah.
I feel like
Love-
I need to
love-
reread them all because I've got more memories of the first two than the last one.
Mm.
Yeah, the last one, there's
The
good
last one
parts
has-
in it, but
Yeah.
it's sorry, Alice, what you
Last one has a whole strand that I don't like one particular storyline.
Yeah, there's a few, there's bits in it. I mean, it's so long ago since I read it. I just remember there was parts of it I was just like, no, not into this. Dia, so far it's very good. Yes.
Good.
Chris says, I'm just reading about all the places in the US where bridge Terabithia has been banned. Yeah, it's a banned book in a lot of the states.
Why?
Yeah, did you know it's one of the ones that's always on their sort of banned, like it's always contested for school libraries and stuff.
Why?
I'm assuming because of the death and the references to she doesn't believe in God. Anyway, we'll get into all that.
Oh, for the love of God.
We'll get into it all, but yeah, well, it's interesting. If you know, Chris, about what the reasons are for the ban request, that would be interesting to know. But I do know it's frequently on lists of books to be requested to be removed from school libraries and banned and stuff in America, which always surprises me because you just we don't have that to that extent over here at all, really, do we? So it's always a surprise.
I just think, look, with some books, I sort of understand. I don't agree, but I can understand why it's been banned. But I mean,
did you see Shelley Swearingen did a week or two ago, and it was like top 10 banned books, or the top 10 most requested to be banned from schools or banned books from 2001 or something. Number one banned book in 2001 was obviously a Harry Potter book because that was a big deal over there. It was the whole witchcraft and thing in America. It was a big deal. And then one of the other books that really surprised me was Captain Underpants. That was on the list. You know that is it Dave Pilkey?
Yeah.
Books. I'm sure that was on there. So, yeah, that was really something.
If you are a parent, I could understand how you wouldn't want your child to read this because of the death. And it's upsetting. Like, it's an upsetting book. If your child was of a certain age, I think you would need to make a judgment call as to whether they were emotionally ready to read that.
Yeah.
But you'd do that with any book, right? You wouldn't just automatically go, no, we're not reading anything about death.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really excellent, if you've not listened to this podcast about the culture wars by John Ronson, it's on BBC Sounds. It's very, very, very good. And there's a whole episode devoted to libraries and banning books in schools and how it's become a real part of the culture wars in America. So it's not the books necessarily that are an issue, and it's not they become like a political football basically, and it's to do with conservatism. And in a lot of states, some states are far worse than others, and they're banned, and different states will ban different will have different ban requests for different books. But it all started off fairly innocently back in because what he does is he traces the origins of these culture wars back to an event or to something that may have started it, and it's really fascinating actually. I'd highly recommend if anyone's interested in that. It's a really good episode. So Zach says 4.5 because it is a good book, but all the angst caused by Jesse's terrible regression is family and culture. Yeah, it's difficult. We're going to get into that actually. We're going to talk about the sort of family backgrounds, etc. We'll get into all of this. In many places, it's been banned for promoting witchcraft and negative worldviews. I suppose the imaginary worlds. I don't know.
Oh, honestly,
I know. Yeah.
God forbid that we should promote imagination in children. These people need to get a life.
I know, nuts, isn't it? Dia is off to puppy sit. I'm San anti-theist. I fight the God Squad. Hashtag Pod Squad. Fight the God Squad. Hashtag Pod Squad. Pod Squad. That must be a reference from your
Women's Prize.
Women's Prize. Pod Squad.
Language, religion, death of a child are some of the reasons it was banned. It's really dumb, the books they ban. It infuriates me. Yeah, it must be infuriating. Thing is, like, I was looking up banned books because, you know, they have this whole like reading banned books thing and blah, 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 blah. And when you look for banned books from the UK, like there's historical famous banned books like Lady Chatterley's Lover and stuff like that. And it's like, that's like from like the 30s. It's like decent, or the 40s, or whenever you wrote it, it's decency problem. At the time, it was like a bit too steamy, right? But then just made people want to read it even more. But they never sort of, I think there are very few that have been banned in the last couple of decades that have received like a morality thing over here in the UK. I think the Clockwork Orange had a big hoo-ha about it back in the 60s or 70s.
Mainly over the film.
Yeah, mainly over the film, but the book was equally badly
the book
received
was also banned,
well. Yeah. But so it's like you don't really get that to this extent here. You know, it's interesting. Which means language meaning swearing. Yeah, there was a little bit of swearing in it, wasn't there? A little bit.
I tell you what, if American parents think that their kids aren't swearing, then maybe they should read a few books. I mean, it depends on the age of the child, right? But once you get to that like almost teen, they're defo swearing. They might not swear in front of you. They might not swear in front of teachers, but in their minds.
Yeah. I do think as well, there's more of a swearing culture here in the UK. That's the other thing. I do. I think we're more sweary. We're far more sweary, and like even like the upper classes particularly are foul mouthed, aren't they? And people think they're so posh, and they're just like effing and blinding left, right, and centre.
My language is atrocious, to be fair.
Well, yeah, we're all like squaddies over here, but
part of the way that we communicate.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's just kind of an everyday thing. And like I'm from London, so obviously. Lots of it. And my parents being from Belfast, it's just like, you know,
you're doubly screwed. Yeah, I regret living in London.
No. Oh dear. So Kat says, I think these people who ban books only make the books more appealing, for sure. Yeah. I completely agree. Zach, check out Ezekiel 23, 19 verses 19 to 20. In the Bible, their standards don't make any sense. Well, this is the thing. I don't know, I was raised Catholic. I'm not very religious. But you know, I'm not a anti whatever. It's like, you know, live and let live in my view of it all. But yeah, I don't know the Bible that well. Apart from being raised Catholic, apart from the Catholic stories I had to learn at school, like the important ones. But yeah, I don't really know much about the Bible and stuff anymore. Burner, one of the banned books here in Turkey, was a bestseller because of sex scenes, and the book was really badly written. Maybe that's why they banned it, because it was badly written. Burner.
That would be an acceptable reason to ban a book.
Yeah.
Or ban Ulysses because it bores me to tears. You know, that's an acceptable reason to ban a book.
Yeah, I'm just, the whole banned books thing, it's baffling to me. I find it fascinating the way it's become this kind of political, really. I mean, it is a political act banning a book. It is, because you're suppressing ideas and speech, aren't you? So it's
going back to what Kat said about it making the books more appealing. Isn't there a Stephen King quote about like, kids, if your school bans a book, go down to your local library and enjoy. Find out what the fuss is about.
He's had some books on the banned list in the States as well, actually. But he, I think the whole like banned books thing is I just find it's been on the rise even more in the last decade or so. Like it kind of went down and then it's just gone again. It's gone up. But I think it's like to do with the political climate and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Ella says, I wish that was the reason too. It was bad. Cat, 4th grade class at my school was reading Bridge to Terabithia, and a student showed me the page with damn on it and seemed shocked. It's hard not to laugh because I'm sure this same child has heard it in movies and by her parents.
I do think it's different when they hear it at school.
Yeah.
Like if they were to hear it from a teacher, that would be different.
It's like when you see it on the page and you're like, oh, you're like a bit naughty when you're a child. Like, oh, even though you've heard it a million times.
Yeah. Moved on from Frog and Toad.
Yeah. 100% Alice, and King has had books banned.
I think that means you've made it as an author.
Yeah, you've made it. Yay! I don't like people infringing on my reading rights. No, and the thing is, I think it makes an assumption that people can't make up their own mind about things. And I think that's it. And I think it's like with children as well, this idea that you have to coddle and protect them from big ideas. Basically, I think it's just doing them a disservice. It's doing them a disservice. And it's like, because we were talking about, we talked about certain books that, you know, where big, like, ideas of, like, especially older books, like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry and stuff like that, where like these big ideas about racism and there's language in them. And it's like, oh, you better not read that with them. And it's like, well, actually, you're better off having the discussion in a safe space with a trusted adult than just ignoring it. And then they go off out into the world as if they don't know any of these things have occurred or any of these ideas are out there, and confront with them in real life before they find them in a book, which it just doesn't make any sense that it would be that way around. It's like as if you're ignoring these problems exist, you know, or these things didn't happen. So yeah, it's interesting. Stephen King, fun fact, his book The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon would have been his only middle grade book. There's one F word he refused to take out. Really? That book was terrifying. That was terrifying, actually, Zach, that book. I read that. And whenever I walk in the woods these days, like if I go for a walk in the woods, I just think of that book because it's.
You talked about this on your video, didn't you, the other day?
Yeah, this girl gets lost. She just wanders off. You know how there's like this massive woods in I think like New England and parts of America, like where if you just go off the path, that's it, you're gone. Like, you know, they're huge. So this girl wanders off from her parents, and basically the whole book is about her being lost in the woods. And I think she's like 8 or 9, and the book's terrifying. It's really frightening.
It was intended as a middle grade book.
Intended as a middle grade. There you go. And it's talking about things that are intended as middle grade books, because Coraline, Neil Gaiman wanted Coraline to be a middle grade.
I remember your video about that as well.
But his publisher were like, no, this is too frightening. It's too frightening. It should be an adult book. So they gave it to his publisher's daughter or his agent's daughter to read to see if she thought it was okay. And she was like, yeah, I love it. Are you scared? No, I'm not scared. And she was lying because she was terrified, but she wanted to read it. So, and then they published it as a children's book. I love that story. Book was also banned for showing disrespect for adults and an elaborate fantasy world that might lead to confusion. Some really just interesting.
We better ban The Hobbit as well then.
Yeah.
And all of the Narnia books.
Any Roald Dahl books showing disrespect to adults, like
yeah.
Carrie, It, Rage, to name a few. I thought Carrie would be banned. You know, Carrie might have been one of the banned ones. Zach loved Tom Gordon, the book, or the actual baseball. He's a baseball player. I think she loves Tom Gordon. You like the actual? I think baseball player. I don't know. American sports person of some kind. Is Tom Gordon is. So she imagines him walking with her in the woods at one point because she's like on her own and she's scared. I think it's been so many years since I've read it, but right. I have a pop-up book of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I adore Coraline. Yes. My little Coraline's behind me on the shelf there. Right. I suppose we should talk about Bridge Terabithia. Let's get into it. Let's get into it before we get half an hour. We haven't even talked about it. Sorry. Spoiler warning for everybody. Just general overall thoughts to start with. So I think let's start with Alice. Alice, what were your overall thoughts on the book? What did you think of it?
Mixed feelings, I would say. Yeah, I think it's my least favourite FOMO book, if I'm honest. But I would be hard pushed to explain why. Like it was fine. It was a decent book. It took me a little bit of time to get into like the narrative voice. I found it a bit like, I know it's a middle grade and I do like a middle grade, a well-written middle grade. But at first I was a bit like, this style is a bit hard work. Well, not hard work, just I didn't really like the way we were getting the story. I can't really explain it.
I don't think you weren't. I don't think you were enjoying it in the beginning, were you? There were some things.
I didn't really like the writing style. And the story was fine. I don't think it was shocking to me because I knew it was a sad book, and I think I knew, or if I didn't know, I had a pretty good idea of what the tragedy was going to be. I think they talk about it in either Bookworm or Dear Reader. I'm not sure if with spoilers, but I did know a bit about it going into it.
Right.
But I mean, it's still pretty shocking when you get to that bit, isn't it? I was a bit like, what? Because it just happened so abruptly.
So you don't kind of expect. I mean, we knew it was going to. Something's going to happen in this book because it's kind of famously a sad thing. But also, it's being a children's book. It's quite a shock. It's like a real, like, someone's just basically you're just not expecting it. I didn't expect it when I first.
The thing that I think did work well about it was I thought that the just sudden shocking abruptness was like realistic to how stuff like that happens. Like, it's a senseless tragedy, right? It's something that like just has happened out of the blue, and that is the way things like that would happen out of the blue. So when we got to that part, it did kind of change the complexion of the book a bit for me. Like, I liked it. It sounds terrible to say I liked it more because somebody died, because I didn't. I don't mean it like that. I just think that, like, you could see that was the point of the book. And in the end of my book, there was like some extra bits about the author and stuff. And there was a bit where it said that she wrote it.
Oh, because her son's friend died.
Because her son's best friend was struck by lightning and killed. And she wrote it to make sense of that. So I thought it all made sense from that. But I mean, in terms of writing style, it wasn't my favourite book. It wasn't really my favourite middle grade book. I don't know. There was just something about it that I found a bit off-putting.
There were some turns of phrase that you weren't that fond of, I think.
Yeah, I just felt like every other, like, not to come back to like things that people were probably banning it for, but I just, not for any religious reason on my part, but it was just annoying me a bit that it was constantly like, Lord, how he did this, and Lord, how he thought this. And I was like, why are you just putting Lord in every other sentence? But I did get used to it.
What about you, Gemma?
Yeah, I actually really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I really liked the simplicity of it. It was quite quiet and understated. And like you say, Alice, that moment in the middle, wherever it happens, that just sort of stops you in your tracks, because it's just sort of ambling along and it's just this nice children's story. And I think it portrays childlike innocence really well, and like the joy of imagination and the joy of like first friendships. And so I really liked all of that. And then I thought the ending was super sad. So
yeah,
I
agree with what you were saying about the whole the portrayal of childhood friendships and stuff. Like, I really loved their friendship. I thought it was really, really lovely, really well portrayed, and that kind of they're wrapped up in their own little world, the exclusion of others, you know, and then they even make their own imaginary world and stuff. And I really like that idea. It's the second time I've read it, so I never read it as a child, but I've read it as a teacher with children, and then I always remember it just being immensely sad when we read it with like a book club I was running, and yeah, I really enjoyed it this second time because there were certain details I couldn't remember. It's been quite a number of years since I read it, and I just think that it's a really simple story and it's very real in lots of ways in terms of the friendships portrayed, and that there was like this kind, the bully and the and his sort of the pecking order in his family and stuff like that. Like I found like and then like you said, Alice, that moment of death, I think it was just handled so well. Obviously it was something that she's experienced with her son's friend and this moment, but it was just like it's done so starkly. It's like you said, it's just this senseless thing. It's happened super quick, and he can't make sense of it to start with. And we'll talk about that moment in a bit, but let's talk about Jessie a little bit actually. I really like Jessie as a character. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think he was really cute, and I really loved just like the opening scenes where he's running around the cow field, like trying to get faster for school because he wants to be the tallest one next year. And like I loved his determination and his sort of approach to problem solving, I guess. Like, okay, so I couldn't be the fastest one last year, but that guy's gone now. So if I can run around this like potholed field really, really fast, like all summer, the next year,
training.
I just loved that, and I thought he epitomised like childhood really well. So I really liked him.
Yeah. And apart from his dance and his lords, did you like him, Alice?
Yeah, now you say that, I did really like that. I didn't particularly like the writing style of the opening, but I liked. I immediately liked him. I liked, as you said, like he had that goal in his life. Like he doesn't really have any friends or anybody at the beginning, does he? He's just like, the thing that I want to do is be the fastest boy on the field when we race, and I'm going to work on that all summer. And coming back to when you were both giving your general thoughts, it did make me think actually I was into the book a lot earlier than I thought, because their friendship was really like what sucked me into it. Like that development of the friendship and the way it sort of, as you said, in quite a quiet way, like developed, and how he started to let her in more, and how it was really sweet, like how much he liked her and wanted to be able to get her a present and stuff.
He was really kind to her.
Cutest, right?
He was so kind. He was so kind to her, because when she turns up on that day in school, and she doesn't know anyone, and she does some things that, because she's been to school in the city, presumably, I can't remember where she'd come from, but she's not done this sort of small rural school before, and she's got a very different background from all of them. And he can tell that the others are kind of looking at her like she's a bit weird, or she's a bit odd, and she's doing these odd things. And initially he's kind of like, oh, and she beats him in the race, and he's just been practicing all summer and everything else. And he could have really held that against her, and he could have been awful to her, but he was just really kind. And like they kind of formed this attachment, and they were just really sweet to each other. And he's very different. That's what I like about him is, I think, because we had a comment. You had a comment, Alice. I don't know if it was in the Discord from Zach about the whole patriarchal kind of the toxic masculinity stuff that he's dealing with from his dad. He's living in a very kind of patriarchal household, but he's very like he loves art. And he likes to draw, and he's doing these things that, like, in a what seems to be quite a patriarchal and kind of masculine farming community, like a rural. He's not your typical boy. Like, he's not doing the typical boy things, for want of a better word. But he's got like a bit of depth about him, and like, but he kind of hides it a little bit as well. The drawing, especially in school. Which was a bit sad, but she brings it out in him, because she cherishes this whole imagination thing. She buys him this paints, and like you said, and he gets her the puppy, PT.
I mean, I think that's quite normal for the time right, you did almost have to adhere to social norms, otherwise you got beaten the crap out of, basically.
Yeah, very traditional like gender roles within the book, and then actually in that time as well. And it, like you said, he would have it's quite a tough life, you know what I mean? They're like, there was moments in the book where people they get beaten up, they get like, you know, it's like really kind of tough kind of little 70s childhood going on, you know. So
I mean, even when I was at school, there were things you didn't do because it was social suicide. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do not go and play an instrument because you don't want to be a music geek. Like, that was just not a thing that you did. Like when I was at school. And every community and every school is slightly different in what is cool and what isn't cool. But yeah, you can imagine in the 80s, liking art and music would defo not have been
gone down well for him.
Community.
Yeah. All right, so Jesse, let's talk about and we can talk about his family actually. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Leslie, what a great character.
She was awesome.
Really awesome. Yeah, I think she's got that thing where she comes in and she's got her own mind and her own ways, and she doesn't really care what other people think about her because she won't wear a dress. You know, like all the girls there are wearing dresses, and she's like, she wears a dress when she wants to go to church and see what church is like on that day. But other than that, she won't wear one, and everyone's looking at her like, why is she not?
That's interesting because if you think about the conversation we just had about Jessie, Leslie is almost the polar opposite. She is going against all of the social norms, and she doesn't care. And I think that's what shocks Jessie really, and like makes him look at her differently because he's not used to that. He's not used to people stepping outside of their box. But she's come from a community where everyone is a bit freer and more.
Yeah, she's very artsy background, very sort of middle class, educated, arty parents, very liberal parents. She calls them by their first names, doesn't she?
Yeah, and she doesn't have Kelly, does she?
Yeah, that was the thing that he said was total social suicide, wasn't it? When she was like, can't do that. I haven't got a TV. He was like, no, you could have.
Don't tell everybody that.
Don't tell them you've not got a TV.
You can come to my house.
So funny. Yeah. And like his family as well, thinking about, because he comes from, he's got 4 sisters and his mum and his dad's always off looking for work, or if he's not working, he's their money's really a big problem for them. And he's got such a poor background. So the pair of them, they're kind of, because her parents, they're basically like, they bought that farmhouse to, mum's a writer and the dad's going to do the farmhouse up. They're kind of these real, like we would call them, they're like hipsters, aren't they? Basically, they're like these hipsters who've moved into the neighbourhood and going to do up the old farm. So class is a real a thing in this. Like, I'm just going to put that up here. Thinking about class, because class was quite a feature of the book. I think, especially when you sort of compare the lives and the family that Jessie and Leslie. And
when you say about them being polar opposites as well, like, and not only in the class situation with their families, and like that Leslie has come from a whole different community, but she's like typical sort of only child, like off in her own world, like has got parents who talk to her like another adult sort of thing. Whereas Jessie is like, not only has 4 sisters that he's growing up with, he's like the middle child in that sisters thing, right? He's got 2 younger sisters and 2 pretty horrible older sisters.
The older sisters are awful. Yeah. They're really awful. And little Maybelle, his little sister.
Yeah.
Talk about her. But yeah, the whole class thing I thought was interesting. The dynamic, and the mum, like his mum thinks that like she doesn't want her in the house. Like she might be looking down on them at one point. And it's the same at the end when they go to visit the family after Leslie passes away, and they go to visit the family, and the mum, they feel a bit like unsure of going to visit them. They go and visit them out of politeness and everything, but they don't feel like they belong there or that they're welcome. It's or that they feel they might be looking down on their house and stuff like that. That kind of came across at one point with the parents, I think, with his particularly.
But it was
I found
interesting.
Leslie's parents were really sweet as well, though. But
it was interesting the way that Jessie worried about like not having money and not being able to get like a really excellent present for Leslie, knowing that she had the ability to get him a present. And also it comes up again when he goes on the like trip to the art gallery with the teacher. He's really genuinely worried that she's paying for his lunch. And that he can't even offer to pay for it because he hasn't got any money. So I thought it was interesting how that came up again and again. And he's quite like a switched on boy, isn't he? You know, he's not only sensitive, but he's, you know, thoughtful and caring. He had a lot of layers.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll have a little look in the comments because we might have people talking about what we've been chatting about. Where are we? A baseball player, Tom Gordon. There you go. Baseball player. I thought he was a baseball player. I have no idea, but you know. He liked the book. He doesn't like sports ball, Zach. Because he said he loved Tom Gordon. I was like, oh, what? The actual sports person or the book? I agree with Alice. Had mixed feelings about the book. Interesting. Why? Yes. What were the mixed feelings? Let's hear about that. Paterson was inspired to write it because a real event happened to her son's best friend. Yes. Struck by lightning. It was interesting, that bit at the end of the book when she talks about that. Zach, I like the movies and music from the 70s, but it's my least favourite decade for writing, including Jaws, The Exorcist, Burnt Offerings, Rosemary's Baby. The movies are all better. Yeah, I've heard the book of Jaws, which I've always thought about reading, is actually really terrible. It's not really very, very typical 70s book. Berna said the book was fine. I actually liked the interview at the end of the audiobook more and gave it 4 stars. Okay.
Fair.
Yeah,
I did give it 4 stars. It wasn't a terrible book.
Kat says, I love this book. Sadness and all. It was a 5-star read for me. Had the honour to meet Katherine Paterson years ago. She's a lovely woman.
Wow. That's
cool. I definitely want to read more Katherine Paterson. There are a few things on Everand.
What else has she written then?
There are some other. I think she has got some other famous ones, or at least one that you'd have heard of. I can't off the top of my head think, but there are a few on Everand that look quite good. Zach, I love how my rating is the highest and I hated it. It's true. Kat, Jesse's a great character. I loved his friendship with Leslie. Yeah, it's a real standout thing in the book. Their fragile masculinity wouldn't let them get beat by a girl in the race. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, though. That's like, of the time that it was in, that they would have been all feeling that way. That, yeah, it wasn't.
I think you'll find there's still a bit of that happens nowadays.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I don't think that's just an 80s thing.
Well, the thing is, it's like, you know, I was talking to one of my students about like women footballers, and they were like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, well, yeah, no, that you wouldn't have been able to be a professional footballer when I was younger. That just didn't happen. They couldn't believe it. They were like, what? It's like, yeah, literally not that long ago.
No.
Like we weren't allowed to play in the football team. Like, we didn't have a girls' football team in my secondary school, and we weren't allowed to play on there was no mixed team. And then when we did sports and did PE, we had to play netball and tennis, and no, we never got to play football ever.
Actually, there wasn't a football team when I was at school either. There was girls, or there was mixed basketball, but we didn't have a football team or a rugby team for girls.
No, and now they have all of it, which is great, and obviously, and quite rightly. But like the girls at school were like my little students are like, what? What do you mean you weren't allowed to play it? It's like we didn't get to play it. We had to play PE separately from the boys in secondary school, and then they got to play football and rugby and stuff, and we had to play. I think hockey was about the most violent game we had to play. Hockey was about the only contact sport. Everything else was like tennis or netball.
Netball.
Yeah, I know. Don't move your feet. Don't move. You've got the ball. Can't move your feet. It's really
what
weird.
Ridiculous. Game. Oh, I hated that. Yeah. No.
Agreed. Berna, I agree, Alice. I liked how their friendship encouraged them to be real to each other. Yes, definitely. I love Leslie too. She was comfortable in her own skin, not worried about other kids, but cared about what Jessie thought. Yeah, most definitely. Zach, do you think his mum was depressed and unfulfilled? Yes. Yes. That woman, I just kept feeling for her the whole way through. And the thing is, like, she wasn't the nicest to him, but can you imagine her life? Like,
No,
can you
I
imagine
actually
her life?
can't. I actually
Oh my
can't.
God, yeah. And at one point he goes up to tell her he's going out for the teachers, and she's in bed and she's just like, just leave me alone. I don't, because he knows she's like trying to catch the last minutes of rest that she possibly can. Oh, that poor woman. And he says, yes, I think so, Zach. Yes, we agree. I think she was sounded like a very depressed woman to me, and who wouldn't be? Go. Paterson's Jacob Have I Loved? Yes, so that's on Everand. Jacob Have I Loved?
So I just had a quick look, and she's actually published loads of books.
Yeah. She's like a very prolific children's author over in the US. I think she's done the adult books. I think she might have done some adult fiction as well.
Yeah, possibly.
I might be wrong. Liddy is another excellent book here by Paterson, YA historical fiction.
Nice.
There you go. And this is her first published book, wasn't it? So,
was it?
Yeah,
I think she has published before, actually.
I feel like this was her first one. I might be wrong. You might be right, Alice. I feel like it was her
only
first.
because there was some kind of timeline in the front.
When she was talking in the thing, I felt like she'd not. Oh, unless she didn't think this book was going to get published because it was a weird book. That was the discussion.
Yeah, there's 3 other books on this timeline before Terabithia.
This was her big standout thing, wasn't it? It kind of was like a runaway success. The film's a bit odd. Like, it was the film from the 2000s, or I don't know if it's in the 90s or 2000s.
Apparently she won the Newbery Medal for this. Then she won the Newbery Medal and the National Book Award for The Great Gilly Hopkins, or Gilly Hopkins, I don't know which one it is. And then she won the Newbery Medal for Jacob Have I Loved as well.
Okay.
I've never read anything.
Well respected. This book made me think of all the Americans who say there's no class problems here in the US. They claim class is only a big thing in the UK. Yeah, it's such a big thing in the US, but I think it's probably overshadowed by race, isn't it? In the US, like the whole idea of class.
Yeah, but those two things are like intrinsically linked, though, like class and race.
It's intersectional, isn't it?
It's what? How can any American say they don't have a class problem?
I always remember that joke. You know, the comedian Reginald D. Hunter. He's American, but he lives in the UK. He's pretty much an Anglophile, and he's African American. He does this stand up, and he says, it's different over here. He says, racism, the issue here is the class system. He says, which as far as I can see, he says, is an excuse to be racist to people who look like you. And I was just like, that's what he says. Up, actually.
That's brilliant.
He's very good. Like, if you ever watch his stuff, he's really good. Reginald D. Hunter, very good. Right, so Kat says, Brother, Sun, Sister Moon, one of her picture books, beautifully illustrated. Does she have someone who illustrates them, or is she also an illustrator? I wonder. I imagine she gets someone who illustrates them. In the interview, she said the film was directed or produced by Paterson's son.
Oh,
interesting. Yeah. In the book, Terabithia, you kind of just get a hint of what they're imagining. She doesn't really go into it. But I actually appreciated, because I didn't want this whole other, kind of magical realism fantasy part. It was very clear that this was an imaginary world that they were making up, that they knew was an imaginary world. And it wasn't like that going off into flights of fancy where they're in this other land. In the film, you have the scenes where you see what they're seeing. They go into the woods and you see the things they're seeing, and they're playing these games, and you see these creatures, and like as if they're from their imagination. So
is the film good?
I think I remember it being good, actually. Yeah, I remember enjoying it. I don't know, having read it recently, if I would still like it as much, because I think I watched the film with the children years ago when I read the book with them, and they loved it. But I don't know how I'd feel about it now, because I've got a very definite picture now in my head of Jessie and Leslie, and I don't know if the children in that really match.
I've still maintained my record of never having once watched any of the adaptations of the FOMO books.
Apart from Good Night, Mr. Tom.
Oh yeah, that's true. But I had watched that many years before.
I watched. I'm going to watch Bridge to Terabithia. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Watch it. I think it's on Disney as well, might be.
Oh, is it? No. Shout out to my friend who reads all the FOMO books with us. She was not happy we'd picked this because she hated the film so much that she was like, I'm not convinced I can read this book because I am going to read it for you. But it's got to be better than the film because she despised the film.
Really? Was there a reason? Like, did she give you any reason?
I'm not sure. Like, she just thought
Did
it
she
was
enjoy the book?
the worst film she's ever seen.
Did she enjoy the book?
She thought the book was better than the film, but she still didn't love it.
It's I think it's one that's quite it might divide opinion a bit, but second read for me was better. I've enjoyed it more the second time actually than I did the first time, and I even liked it then. But it's different teaching a book from just reading it yourself. You know, Alice, it's different. So I enjoyed it more. Can't haven't seen the film yet.
Yeah. It's funny that I turned up tonight feeling quite negative about the book, and actually the more both of you talked about it, the more I thought, oh yeah, that was really good.
Do you think that about FOMO books though? When we come on to discuss it, I'm always like, oh yeah, actually this was a really good book.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, we I don't think we've picked any stinkers at all.
No.
You didn't like the first one, did you, Jen?
Was the first one? Oh, the first one was a stinker again.
The castle one.
Yeah, no. It just wasn't my jam, but I appreciated parts of it, and I thought the discussion was good afterwards. But that's my least favourite. But
this is still probably my least favourite, but I do appreciate what it was doing.
Yeah.
I think so far my least favourite has probably been the Kira Millward Hargrave, and I still really enjoyed it. Zach says, I liked the movie when it came out. I was surprised Leslie was a tomboy in the book because she was played by Anna Sophia Robb in the movie, who looks... Yes, exactly. This is what I mean by, like, I don't think the children, him, the boy or the girl, are what I would imagine Leslie and Jessie.
Who played Jessie?
They're both very good-looking kids. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they're really kind of Disney kids.
Yeah, I know. I think I looked it up the other day and I saw her and I thought, oh yeah, she's very Disney. But I don't know who's Jessie.
So there's my image of Leslie.
It's Jessie's played by the guy who grew up to be the guy in the Hunger Games.
Oh
no. Yeah, that's Peter, isn't it? Josh Hutcherson.
Is it really?
Josh Hutcherson. There you go.
Sure.
I'd imagine someone like Jodie Foster when she was young, or, you know, someone like that for Leslie.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I don't picture Leslie at all like these pictures of Leslie. No thanks.
Not at all. No, she looks like that's not Leslie, is it?
No. Yeah, no.
Far too glamorous.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Too pretty.
Yeah.
I don't know, unless they like dulled her down for the.
It's I think it's of the time. When was it made, that film? 2000 and something?
Early 2000s.
Yeah, it's kind of got that.
7.
Yeah, it's the glamour kind of, like it's not being real. It's not. The book is a very, like, for me, it's like this portrayal of these kids in this community. It's very rural. It's very, like, you know.
Yeah. Was it a Disney film?
I don't know if
it was Disney.
It's on the Disney Channel, so it must be Disney. But Disney Channel shows loads of stuff, doesn't it? So I didn't know if it was. Talking about Terabithia and Maybelle. So I've got a few things to chat about, but Terabithia, what did we think of it? Did you feel like at certain points, like, actually, because they're so quite with it and together, that is Terabithia a bit too young for them? Like, what did you feel like it kind of matched their age? Because they were having these like real involved imaginative role play. What did you think? Did it match their characters? Was it realistic that they would be playing like that?
That's a very good question.
I don't know. I think because it was pretty vague, as you said, like you could kind of imagine it yourself, but it was kind of left really, really vague in the book, which made me just feel like to me, for a book called Bridge to Terabithia, Terabithia wasn't made that much of.
Yeah.
Like I was expecting almost more Terabithia.
Well, also the interesting thing is the name of it is Bridge to Terabithia, and of course they don't have a bridge, and of course it's not having the bridge that leads to the whole accident and everything that happens, isn't it? Leslie swings across the river.
I read it as I think Terabithia is not just like a fantasy land with kings and queens and stuff, although sometimes they do talk about that. I think it was more of like a sanctuary.
Yeah, I think I would concur with that. And I think I hadn't really thought about this question before you broached it, Jack, but I think because they are both quite isolated in very different ways, but they both live a very isolated life. And when they come together, maybe they're just expressing everything they haven't really been able to express in their childhoods until that point. So maybe they seem a little older, but they haven't had that opportunity in younger childhood years. Do you see what I mean?
He definitely hasn't, because he's just like been working on this farm, like, you know, trying to be a boy. And you know, even amongst his siblings, he hasn't got anyone that he's close to. You know, so yeah, that makes sense.
And some of the time I almost got the feeling that Jessie didn't quite know how to play that way. Like
she
almost
taught him all of that. She did.
It really felt like he was like, oh, we're like imagining that we're talking to like what, the gods of Terabithia or whatever, the spirits of Terabithia.
Yeah, because even the language she would use, he
didn't really get how to do it.
Yeah, because she would like talk in that way, like she's like, oh, you know, very lofty kind of like kings and queens speech. She would tell him stories as well, because he loved to listen to her tell stories. She's a real storyteller, and that influenced him, because, you know, up until that point, I imagine his life is just racing in the schoolyard and then milking the cow and hiding from his sisters, you know, in the evening. So yeah, I think she did teach him a lot. She taught him a lot about being a child, because I think he's had to do a lot of very grown up, like his life is hard work, isn't it? Apart from school, and he's got his little sister to look after. So, I suppose we should talk about the incident. So it was a big surprise when he goes off with the teacher, doesn't he, Miss Edmonds, who he loves. He has a real crush on her, doesn't he? And so what did you think of this teacher? Because she takes him off for a day, doesn't she, to the art gallery, the Smithsonian or the art gallery? I can't remember.
When I first read it, I thought, that's not very professional. But I think given the time that it was set and the fact that it was a very rural community, and knowing what actually happened on that trip now, I do think she genuinely wanted to give Jessie opportunities that he wouldn't otherwise have. I mean, you just wouldn't be able to do it now, would you?
I know. I completely agree, because like, there's a bit of me reading that when she's like ringing him up. Do you want to go to the thing? And I'm like, no, what are you doing? You can't help but go, what's that about? But this is a very modern, cynical kind of thing. She's like this. She wants to take. She knows he loves art, and she's taking him for the day, and she like buys him lunch and shows him this gallery. And all you keep thinking is, why didn't he take Leslie with him? Why?
Even though I didn't know what was coming, I was still like, mate, that was a bit below the belt. You could have given her a bell. Do you know what I mean? And then when I found out afterwards, I was like, oh,
no. The foreshadowing of it When you think back now that you know what happened, there's so much foreshadowing and talk about death.
Oh, there is. And yet I was still taken unawares.
And also the like, it's almost shocking, like the teacher taking him off, fine, but in this day and age, not only are we like, whoa, that's kind of weird, I also felt like it's kind of shocking that when he gets back, they're like, oh, we didn't know where you were, we thought you were dead as well, sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, because in them days you obviously just went off. I've got off my teacher, bye. I'll just tell Mabel to tell people I'll be back later.
But even going off for the day, like when I was a kid, you go off and you're like, I'll be back at dinner time.
Yeah.
Come back when it's dark. And you're like, great.
Yeah, you didn't have a phone.
I'll be back when it's dark. And that's what you would do. Like, your mum wouldn't know where you were. There's no phones. But really, you're just like, off you go. Like, you know, this would never happen now. So yeah, it's interesting. Like this, like that whole day where he goes off with the teacher, it's like his best day of his life, and then it's the worst day of his life. Like it's just so that I don't know why. I suppose it had to be that way, that she dies when he's not there, because Katherine Paterson obviously planned to write this book about this thing that happens and the grief and everything else. But like, she gives him this like perfect day just before she breaks his. Yeah.
She even called the chapter The Perfect Day. And it's like, then at the end of the chapter, she's like, your girlfriend's dead.
Yeah, it's awful.
It's
really, really horrific when that happens. The whole grief thing, she talked about it briefly there, Alice, but that the moment he can't quite get his head around it, and when he gets up in the morning, you know, when he's just eating breakfast and he doesn't really believe it. And they're all looking at him like, why is he behaving like this? Because he's obviously in shock. I just found that the whole thing, it was just, and his parents must have been absolutely terrified for him, because they obviously did think he'd gone missing as well. It was Mabel was like, I told you he was off with his teacher. But yeah, I think that whole grief part was really well done. But the whole build up to it all, talking about Leslie and the foreshadowing, there's parts where like the build up with the river getting bigger and bigger and rushing more and more, he's getting frightened of it, and he's like, that's dangerous, and he's scared of it. And to the point where when she drowns, he is like, I don't want to go, but I'm too scared to tell her I don't want to go. So and he's quite almost relieved that he's got this excuse to not go and cross over on the swing across the river on the old rope. And the other part of it is when they go to church, and the religion part, and I think this is one of the bits that probably gets it banned in the States, or request for it to be banned, is Leslie goes to church with them. And Leslie's like talking about that she doesn't believe in God, and Mabel was like, you're going to go to hell when you die, like you're not going to go to heaven. And Leslie's like, I don't believe in hell or heaven. And what will happen when you die, Leslie? Like, it's this whole foreshadowing part, and that leads up to it, which, you know, I found that whole section.
And I thought the revisiting of that, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but like, it is his dad that he's talking to when he's like, but like, she didn't believe, and it's like, that means that like she'll be in hell or whatever. And his dad's like, no, it's not like that, son. It was like a really, really sad moment.
That conversation between them, I didn't actually cry when I found out Leslie died, but that conversation between father and son is what got me.
I was too shocked to cry when she died. I was just like, what?
Yeah. Kind of like him himself, right? It's like, this can't be real. What? Which I think, if there's a sudden death, especially of a young person, it's like a very like shocking, like it must, that moment of no, that can't be right. And he has that moment, and you as the reader have that moment, because it's just like plonked right in there in the story, like you're not expecting it at all, and there it happens, and he's just no, she's off playing somewhere, this isn't real. I thought it was handled really well. And the dad, his dad's compassion for him and the way his dad is with him, considering that the way they've been awful throughout the whole book, that really got me actually in the end, Gemma, that bit with the dad, the conversation. And so at the very end, to get over it all, we've got the whole bridge element. He decides, he builds a bridge? I can't even remember now.
Yeah, he does. He does. Was it with a plank or like a tree trunk or something? And then Maybelle sort of gets halfway over and then chickens out.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
He has to rescue her.
Freezes in the middle of the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then right at the very end, he gets proper planks, doesn't he? And makes them proper bridge and invites Maybelle to actually come over to Terabithia.
He says, they need a new queen or whatever in Terabithia at some point. Yeah, which I thought was quite melancholy, but quite it was a sad ending. But the whole book being called Bridge to Terabithia, and it's not until the very end you get the bridge and she dies because there is no actual bridge. Like I found that whole bit was bittersweet at the end, I think. So Kat says she thinks Bridge to Terabithia symbolises Jesse's life before and after Leslie. His relationship with his family changes for the better, especially his dad. Interesting, because bridges being built is a very symbolic thing, isn't it? I also think it kind of, like you said, symbolises Jesse's life before and after. Like she opened up this whole world of imagination for him. Like you were saying, Alice, he didn't really know how to join in her imaginative games, or he wasn't quite sure, but she's opened up this whole world of possibilities for him, like that bridge to the whole idea of Terabithia and the imaginative things. She's opened that up for him. That's just imagination and creativity, and I really like that idea. Allows Jesse to be himself. Good. Berna, I had been spoiled by the ending, so I also realised the foreshadowings. Yeah, they're really obvious when you know what's going to happen. It's really obvious all the way through. I blame fragile masculinity for what happened to Leslie. If she'd spoken up about not wanting to swing over the flooded river earlier, she probably wouldn't have done it alone. Well, actually, I didn't think it was that she didn't want to do it. It was, are you saying if he'd spoken up? Yes, gotcha. If he had spoken up, you're quite right, actually. If he had spoken up about it or just said, let's not do it, maybe it could have been avoided. But it's not,
I disagree with it being fragile masculinity, though.
No, I think it's just
childlike behaviour. I think it could have been either one of them. I don't think it was. I think he wanted to be stronger for his friend.
I also think it's like he saw the danger in it. I think he's a much more practical person.
Yeah,
he understood the danger in that river, and he couldn't swim.
No, and he was really scared about it.
And he couldn't swim, so he knew if he fell he was done for if he fell in that river. Like they both would be, but she obviously had this, like, and children, in terms of risk assessment, children are not the best at risk assessing anything really. And she's, she probably still would have tried to swing over. She would have been like, I'll go.
And one of the first things that Jesse says about it when they're like, she's dead. He's like, no, she was, when they tell him what's happened, he's like, but no, she was really, really good at swimming. Like that can't have happened to her. Like she would have swum, but she'd obviously hit her head or something, wouldn't she?
I think there was was the swing on a rotten branch or something, or
I can't quite remember, but something like that.
It had snapped or something. Yeah, it was rotten.
Lumber from Leslie's dad. That's right. That's what he builds the bridge from. Yeah. And the dad, and actually Leslie's family, when they have to say goodbye, my heart was breaking for them. That was awful. But when he says, I was going to leave you the dog, but I can't.
I know. Yeah. I was like, no.
No, you wouldn't be able to, would you? But it's, but yeah, you could see it. And they were just so lovely with him as well.
They were.
Yes, so I enjoyed it. Thank you for reading it with us. Any final thoughts?
I think I would read more Katherine Paterson, especially now I've discovered that she has a massive backlist. I would definitely read more from her. I think her characterization was really good. So Yeah,
I agree. I definitely would read more. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not a huge, apart from Bridge to Terabithia, she's just not a huge author over here, but I think she's like a very like staple, well-respected children's author in the States, you know.
Yeah.
So feeling a bit better about the book, Alice, after the chat as well.
We convinced you.
No, I did come around to it quite quickly while I was reading it, to be honest. I remembered once talking to you guys. Because otherwise I wouldn't have given it 4 stars. But I just think it's a strange book.
It is an odd book.
Yeah.
It's not your typical, like, it's not a typical children's book. In fact, it talks about, you know, books in children's books where, like, novels where death actually happens to a character. I've only read one recently. I read one very recently, which is about a child whose friend has died. But aside from that one, off the top of my head, I can't think of that many children's books where it features like that.
Good night,
Mr. Tom.
Oh, good night, Mr. Tom. Of course, we always we're picking the really sad children's books.
Which is what I didn't think that this held up to. Like, this was
it doesn't.
Oh, it's not. No, it's not as good as that.
It's not a
like the year before, we'd had Goodnight, Mr. Tom, and I just didn't think that this second middle grade pick for FOMO was anywhere near.
I think the thing about Goodnight, Mr. Tom was it was actually probably one of my top books of last year. Anyway,
Yeah.
like, I couldn't stop sobbing while I was listening to that, and I was lying in bed and it was 3 a.m, trying not to wake Dave up. Like,
It was a reread, and I was sobbing.
You know when you're lying on your back? I was lying there and I'm listening to it, and the tears were rolling down into my ears onto my headphones.
Oh dear. I think that's a difficult one to top. Do you know what I mean? The bar gets so high with Mr. Tom.
It's a very special book. But yeah, I can't believe I was like, I can't think of any other books with kids and their friend dies. Of course. We just spoiled that for everybody. But yeah. If you haven't read it, do read it. It's very good.
Yeah.
But talking about new FOMO books, our next one, I have got it here.
Strangers on a Train.
Strangers on a Train, Patricia Highsmith. That's the pick for May and June. Right, yeah. May and June. So we'll be discussing this over on Alice's channel. So if you've not heard of it, I don't know who you might be if you've never heard of this book before. I've never read any Patricia Highsmith.
No.
But she's having a moment, isn't she? Because is it Ripley's on
on
Netflix at the moment?
Yeah.
I haven't read that one.
You've read Ripley, haven't you?
I've read that one. I haven't read any of her others, but I've read The Talented Mr. Ripley.
I remember the film, the Matt Damon, but I haven't watched the TV show yet. But it's getting some, people are liking it. Your man
we started the TV series, but it was all in black and white, and we weren't really in the mood for it.
I think you'd have to be, I suppose, a bit stylized. But Strangers on a Train, also, is it Hitchcock?
Yes, it's a Hitchcock film.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Which I also haven't watched.
There's a really awesome film from like 1989 or I can't remember when it was, but it's Billy Crystal and Danny DeVito, and it's called Throw Mama from the Train, and it's based on Strangers on a Train, and it's really, 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 really good. So basically, Billy Crystal plays this like writer who's running like writing classes in an evening, and Danny DeVito is in his writing class, and he's like, and Danny DeVito's mum is this, like, the woman from Goonies who plays the mum in the Goonies, like, her, she's his mum in it, and he can't stand her, and he's like, because Billy Crystal's character writes like murder mysteries, and he's like, wow, what would you do? He's like, it's like Strangers on a Train, 2 people who don't know each other crisscross, they swap murders, and and then he realized his ex-wife is suddenly murdered, and he's like, what's going on? And Danny DeVito's like, you're gonna have to kill my mum now. So it's like literally this whole it's like a dark comedy based on Strangers on a Train. It's very, very, very funny. Really good.
Nice.
Yeah, well worth watching. Berna said it is Hitchcock. The movie is better. What? She's read it. Where are we? Let's see. She said, there you are. Yes, it is Hitchcock, and the movie is better. But she
I
already
would say
read
the
book
movie is
already very
never
much.
better. But I read a book with Bernard recently, which was The Man in the High Castle.
Most
And
Philip K. Dick
Bernard
films are better.
Bernard assures me that the adaptation of that is a billion times better than the actual.
I have to say, like Philip K. Dick, like Blade Runner and Minority Report, both I much prefer the films to the books. Like, really, He's basically great ideas, but very dry.
Yeah.
Very dry.
Great ideas, but obviously better realised on the screen.
Yeah. But he wrote, was it him that wrote Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep?
I think that was
Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep is Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very different.
I actually quite liked the book, but I've never watched the film. So
I love Blade Runner. Like the movie, I'm a huge fan.
I've never watched it.
It's a brilliant film, but the book's very different.
Yeah, I've heard they're almost nothing alike.
Very, very different. Like it's barely anything similar to them. It's if I remember correctly. Basically, I remember in the book they like people have like because animals like a real animal is a status symbol, and then you've got these kind of replicant animals and
yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's not the film's not like that. So where are we? Last few final thoughts we've had. Zach says, I've said that about fragile masculinity. Lumber from Leslie's dad. This is where we were. I thought it was very postmodernist philosophically, but I didn't think you wanted to talk about that long. Okay.
Yeah, it's getting a bit late in the evening.
Yeah. Thanks for another wonderful book club selection. Enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, Kat. Thanks for joining us. Yes. It'll be your first Patricia Highsmith, mine too. Mine too. Strangers on a Train is a reread. Read it about 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it very much. And then I would. Oh yeah, Kat said that's a great movie, Jack. So funny. Yeah, Throw Mama from the Train. It's very, very good. And we'll have to watch that instead of the Hitchcock. It'll be much fun. The book is much, much better than the reread.
I think the means the one we read. The Man in the High Castle. Oh, goodness.
Well,
it couldn't be much worse.
Well done for finishing it. You're good. Right. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed the chat. I've enjoyed it.
Yes.
And thank you for we did. I think we did quite well considering. It's been a day and a week. But yeah, hopefully everyone will join us for the next book. And Alice is going to host over on her channel at the end of, I want to say the end of June, but it could be the beginning of July because the way things have been lately with us trying to find
time is dependent. Yeah.
I'm probably going to leave off reading this until June so that I've got it in my fresh.
Yeah, I think I will too.
All right. Well, bye everybody. Thanks for joining us in the chat.
Bye guys.